Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from the film theaters about how Emesis Blue is more disturbing than you think. And thanks to me checking out the kill count for it back on Tuesday, I am prepared and ready for this. So let's hop in and check it out.
Emesis Blue is one of the best written, most engaging mysteries I've ever seen on YouTube. Yeah, what might seem on the surface like a terrifying horror fan film is actually a deep, introspective look at what it means to be alive and whether sometimes you might be better off dead.
Oh yeah?
Hello Internet! Welcome to Film
believe.
Theory, the show that knows that a lot of you have been waiting for this theory for
longer than you think.
Yeah, today we are finally talking about a movie called Emesis Blue, one of the coolest projects I've ever seen from independent creators here on YouTube. Yeah, this is
It took the guy 5 years to make it.
An entire movie made by a channel called Fortress Films, released right here on this website for free. You guys recommended this one a lot, and you know what? This is one of those situations where I should have done this one way sooner because there's just so much to dig into here. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. What even is this? Emesis Blue is what is known as a machinima. That's basically an entire film made within a video game. Have you ever seen a show like Red vs. Blue, or a funny clip of a gaming character doing something that absolutely did not happen in their game? That was likely a machinima. In this case, Emesis Blue was created using a software called Source Filmmaker, created by video game company Valve Software. Have you ever bought a game on your computer from Steam, or played a Half-Life, Portal, or Left 4 Dead game? That was Valve, and in 2012 they released Source Filmmaker, their internal software for making video game trailers to the public. Fun fact, Skibidi Toilet was also done in Source Filmmaker, though I think what Fortress Films is doing here is probably just a little bit more impressive. Basically, they've taken the characters and world of Valve's multiplayer shooter, Team Fortress 2, and straight up made a movie out of it. In case you need the lowdown here, Team Fortress is set in the 1960s and follows the conflict between rival brothers Redmond and Blue Tarch Man. The pair each lead the companies Reliable Excavation Demolition and Builders League United. RED versus BLU, you get it? And have hired 9 constantly respawning mercenaries to fight it out in an endless battle for dominance. That's the Spark Notes. And honestly, in the Team Fortress game series itself...
Ooh, you know what? I wonder if I could get if we can get these guys to actually check out Silver Blight.
The storyline isn't that important.
Good.
It's just a justification for why you're getting sick headshots and wearing funny hats. But it was fleshed out in a bunch of machinima shorts and comic books released over the years. But Emesis Blue takes a lot of the ideas and lore for the Team Fortress series and puts a unique horror movie spin on it. Yeah, gone are the comedic shorts created to showcase the characters.
I am heavy weapons guy, and this is my weapon.
And in its place is something truly terrifying.
Oh yeah, there goes the head.
But underneath the spooky scaries is a genuinely engaging mystery and one of the best written thrillers I've seen in years, from Hollywood or otherwise, with just so much meaning and symbolism layered into this story. Yeah, this references everything from Pulp Fiction to obscure 1930s German cinema to short stories by one of the most famous horror authors of all time. Who is
Stephen King and a movie called M, all both referenced in it.
Responsible for the atrocities we see in this movie? Why are they happening, and how exactly are the dead coming back to life? I'm gonna be real with you, loyal theorists. There's a lot to unpack with this one, and despite my best efforts, there is absolutely no way we're gonna be able to cover this in one theory, even if it's a bit longer than normal. If y'all enjoy this, we might end up making a couple more theories, so let me know what you think in the comments, but for now, suit up and grab your favorite hat, loyal theorists.
Just went ahead and gave the video a like.
We're decoding the mystery of Emesis Blue. And real quick, I gotta say, my watching experience of Emesis Blue was made all the better thanks to Opera, the sponsor of today's theory. Listen, I am always trying to optimize my time on the internet, whether it's doing research or just watching videos. Web browsers are a huge part of it, and I have just fallen in love with Opera. I've personally used Opera for years, ever since they implemented the Tab Island feature. Like, I don't know about you, but I always end up with way too many tabs open while doing a deep dive into a Wikipedia wormhole. But tab islands group them based on context. Like, do you have a bunch of tabs open from YouTube? Well, they'll be in their own island and collapse down to save you a bunch of space. They also have this new feature called tab traces, which leave little subtle highlights on tabs that you've recently looked at. Yeah, no more trying to find what you were just reading, but lost because you clicked away. And they've also just put in this split screen feature, which lets you have 2 tabs open at the same time in the same browser window. So you can watch a video on one tab while reading, or take taking notes in another, all without opening a new video and slowing things down. And that isn't even touching on their built-in Aria feature. With Aria, you can press Control plus /, pull up a prompt, and ask Aria a question. It'll then search to get you that answer, all without leaving the web page that you're on. Plus, Aria also has a built-in image recognition feature, so it can look at images that you upload and tell you all about it. Let me just say that this has been super useful for us as we research stuff for theories.
That actually does sound very useful.
We can just upload an image to Aria and it gives us a lead that we can explore. So if you want to check out the future of browsing, check the link in the description to download Opera. Thanks again to Opera for sponsoring this theory, and let's jump back into the terrifying world of Emesis Blue. So let's do our best to do a brief explainer here. Well, at least as brief as we can be, considering that this movie is so dense it might as well collapse under its own weight and become a black hole. Emesis Blue starts out with a montage of a device known as the respawn machine, but it's not quite operating as intended. A machine that controls life and death and starts going wrong. I wonder if this is going to be a problem at all. Anyway, we then cut to a character called the Scout visiting a medic named Dr. Fritz Ludwig. I guess the Scout was real impressed by his Elden Ring streams. These two used to be mercenaries working for Blue, but Scout was let go after some accident. We actually later see a termination notice explaining exactly what happened. The respawn machine malfunctioned, damaging the Scout's brain and leaving him with an IQ of just 48. He now has to be under the constant care of a legal guardian, in this case, his mother. The Scout explains to Ludwig that he's been paranoid and having bad dreams, and Ludwig gives him a checkup before driving him home. I should note that a lot of the characters, especially Ludwig, keep having strange, unexplainable visions and dreams throughout the whole movie. It adds to
again, nothing is really explained.
The surreal horror atmosphere, and is a big part of the mystery here because, well, there seems to be something truly paranormal going on here. For example, before the Scout and Ludwig leave the medical office, there's a couple of odd moments where a box of VHS tapes is mysteriously knocked over and a set of double doors are pushed open by, well, no one. Weird. Anyway, after he returns home, the Scout's mother is murdered by a creepy pyro and a mysterious second assailant that we don't see, who also—
Yeah, the second assailant is the one that actually killed the mother. The pyro, who is apparently called the Butcher, he's probably going to mention that later, is just standing over there.
So kidnaps the Scout. Soon afterwards, Ludwig wakes in his office after having another freaky dream, but his hands are covered in blood. He's then told by a mysterious stranger that the Scout has been kidnapped and is being held in a building called the Conager Slaughterhouse, and that Ludwig will have to go there if he wants to save him. While all of this is happening, there's a second storyline following two other characters, the spy detective and his assistant, the soldier. The pair are investigating the kidnapping of New Mexico Governor Jules Archibald and track a heavy into an alley where he's waiting to hand off a mysterious briefcase. The three fight, and the heavy is killed, but not before a mysterious character called the Undertaker wearing a plague doctor mask steals the briefcase and escapes into a black hearse. The pair are able to track the Undertaker and the hearse down to the scene of crime, the murder of the Scout's mother, where they discover evidence that the second assailant was none other than Dr. Ludwig himself. They then investigate Ludwig's office and also follow the clues leading to the Conager Slaughterhouse. Though interestingly, the hearse that the Undertaker stole has been crashed outside of the building. Ludwig sneaks into the facility where he finds and frees the Scout, but the Scout thinks that he's one of his captors and tries to escape. Sadly, he's quickly captured by a pair of engineers, one of whom takes the Scout and painfully kills him off screen. Ludwig notices a briefcase
leaving behind nothing but a hat
case in the room, the same one that the Undertaker stole earlier. That's weird. And then tries to sneak up and take out the other engineer, but is discovered, shot, and killed. And yet, something happens to Ludwig. His blood literally returns to his body, his wounds sealing up, and he comes back to life. With this second chance, Ludwig takes control of the situation, killing both engineers, mourning the Scout, taking the suitcase, and trying to find a way out. That rhymed. Didn't even mean to do that. Meanwhile, the spy and soldier infiltrate the slaughterhouse through the sewers, but the pair gets split up with the spy getting captured by the pyro and the soldier recruiting a demo man, another injured prisoner, and running into Ludwig. The three descend deeper into the facility, all while having even more—
it's unknown how deep they actually go—
crazy visions and fighting several zombies. Yeah, like actual zombies.
Yeah, look at
this movie gets insane. All the while, the spy is able to escape and kill the pyro, but is nearly burned to death himself. In the depths of the facility, the group finds Archibald in a prison again, but the Demo Man succumbs to his wounds and dies. We actually see this
Well, freezes to death, but
through his
technically,
eyes.
yes.
Well, and the Demo Man just thinks that he's shown up to a bar tended by an old friend of his. This appears to be another engineer who died in an earlier video by Fortress Films. Back in the land of the living, the soldier discovers proof that he is one of the mercenaries that has been cloned several times. He sees a frozen clone of himself, finds an image of Archibald about to shoot one of his clones, and hears a recording of
That's actually not a clone, that's the original, the first.
Archibald confessing to abusing the respawn machine for profit.
Well, supposedly it is the first guy in that picture, the original, I mean, according to James A. Janice.
As it turns out, Archibald is responsible for creating hundreds of thousands of clones, resulting in hundreds of thousands of deaths. He's been feeding into the conflict between Red and Blue, pitting them against each other for his own personal profit, despite the inhumane treatment of the people being respawned. Obviously, not only does this cause severe mental trauma for the soldier, but it also explains why the respawn machine has started malfunctioning. Archibald has been respawning these same people over and over and over and over, all in the name of making money, and it's just started to wear out. This is why the scout had those.
Yeah, supposedly from what he was saying in a phone call later on, or we'll hear in a moment, he's cloned these 9 people over 800,000 times.
Defects we discussed earlier. The respawn machine just started to break. Meanwhile, Ludwig discovers the actual respawn machine and has a mental breakdown. He thinks he sees the scout inside of it before the apparition disappears, and he witnesses a vision of himself murdering the scout's mother earlier in the movie. Terrifying stuff, man. It's just so effective. But even more strangely, he also witnesses a conversation between himself and the scout, and then knocks over a box of VHS tapes and tries to open a door to follow them. Remember earlier when those things happened at the beginning of the movie? It seems like there might be some legit time travel going on here, if things weren't already confusing enough. Anyway, the now horribly burned spy finds and kills Archibald, furious for the role that he's played in all of this. He then decides that he's going to take Archibald's place in the scheme and also captures both the soldier and Ludwig, planning to pin all of these deaths and murders on Ludwig himself. The three then play a round of gun gambling, which Ludwig loses and then he dies. The spy then escapes with the briefcase, while the soldier finds himself in a pit full of dead clones and having even more crazy visions. At this point, it's unclear what's real, what's a weird time travel vision, and what's just straight up a hallucination.
But at
the end of it, the soldier is able to escape as the slaughterhouse collapses once and for all. Sometime later,
one thing he actually forgot to mention, though it's probably not important to the story, is that the heavy that was shot earlier was actually revived and made into pretty much Mr. X for the movie. But there at the end, as the soldier is leaving, and that revived heavy is crushed by the building.
A funeral is held for Archibald, with the spy giving a speech blaming Ludwig for all of the deaths that night. Interestingly, he still has that mysterious briefcase, but the real mind blow comes when a very much alive Ludwig bursts out of the coffin and kills the spy and several people attending the funeral. The Undertaker watches on as Ludwig and the soldier have a moment, realizing that they're on the same side. The soldier helps Ludwig kill those responsible for the whole clone war as Ludwig steals the suitcase, hijacks an ambulance, and escapes into the night. Later, and exhausted, Ludwig pulls over at a bar, the same bar that we saw the Demo Man in earlier. In the bar, we see several characters that we know to be dead. The engineers, the scout, Archibald. Ludwig goes to the bathroom, but notices that his reflection has disappeared and a darker copy of himself stands behind him. We pull out and reveal that there is no bar.
Along with that, and before we actually leave the bar, we look at the bottle of the pills that he has been taking and using. He peels off the label and reveals, well, it's actually called Emesis. You know, like Emesis Blue. And the pills are actually meant to help combat the side effects of the respawn machine.
Ambulance has crashed, killing Ludwig and smashing the suitcase open, revealing a red light inside. The film ends as we zoom in on the interior of the suitcase, and one last person walking out of the burning respawn machine. Finn, cue credits. Man, that was a lot. This film is just packed with complex character motivations, literary references, and multi-layered symbolism. I tried to keep that whole "what the heck is this even about" section to a bare minimum, and there was still just so much I had to leave out for the sake of time. You have to go watch this for yourself if you want the whole story. For real, there's a reason that a lot of the
Look
explainers
at
for this
this.
movie here on YouTube are longer than the actual film itself. All that being said, for our purposes today, I think we should try to narrow down the main
crazy
mysteries that
good.
we want to solve here. First of all, what's in the suitcase that everyone wants in the movie? And secondly, who is the mysterious Undertaker? Well, as it turns out, the answers here are connected, so let me explain. Let's start out by talking about the mysterious briefcase. Now, I wish I could go on and on speculating about what's inside of it here. After all, there's a clear homage to several films that use a briefcase as a big MacGuffin, but never explains what's inside. But
Never
we
figured out.
actually do know exactly what's inside. The movie doesn't
really
tell
now?
us, but the filmmakers do. See, these creators
Oh,
have a Patreon
okay.
to support their work
That's
here
sweet.
with these films. Please go check it out if you have any interest in helping them continue to make just awesome work. And one of the rewards that they offered here is the screenplay they wrote for Emesis Blue. Naturally, because I want to be as thorough as possible, and because I'm certifiably insane, I backed the creators, downloaded the script, and just poured over it. And in the screenplay, they don't really treat the briefcase like a mystery at all. In fact, they're pretty upfront about what's inside. The respawn
yeah.
core. Basically,
Whoa.
whatever technology was being used to power the respawn chamber, that's also inside of this briefcase. And now, all of a sudden, a lot of things make a lot more sense.
Wait, that would actually explain why the respawn machine saw the malfunction. And because the core was removed.
Right? This
Duh.
is why this device is so highly sought after by so many characters in this movie. It explains why the spy is holding onto it, even at the end of the movie, since it would be key for him to replace Archibald in the Clone Wars scheme. And remember that scene where Ludwig was straight up shot and killed, but somehow miraculously came back to life? Well,
Yeah.
what was in the room with him here? The respawn core. Same thing at the funeral when Ludwig popped out of the coffin. The spy had the respawn core. So easy peasy, that's one mystery solved. But how does it connect to the
Must
mysterious
be.
Undertaker? Well, to answer that, we need to discuss exactly what happens when someone respawns, because we know it's not pretty. In fact,
Oh, yeah,
there's
not
something
even.
incredibly wrong about the respawn machine. We learn in the movie that they tried to make it work with tons of different people, but were only really successful with 9. But what happens to the people who aren't compatible with the respawn
10
machine?
classes,
Well, other
only
than
9
them
people.
outright dying, coming back deformed, or not coming back at all. Well, just take a listen to this message of someone talking about their experience inside of the respawn machine.
It's longer than you think. I see the other side.
And again, when the
Ooh.
demo man talks to the spirit of his deceased friend.
Longer than you think.
It's longer than you think.
Longer
I
than you
nearly
think.
jumped out of my chair when I first heard this because this is a reference to one of my favorite horror short stories ever, The Jaunt by Stephen King. See,
Yep, that's also pointed out by James A. Janice in the kill count.
in this story, humanity has created technology
Teleportation.
that lets us teleport, but there's one big side effect. If you teleport while conscious, you either die immediately or go crazy and then die shortly afterwards. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar? So, to avoid this, people are put to sleep with gas before teleporting. The main character of this story tells his kids about this, and when the family travels to Mars for a business trip, the son holds his breath so he isn't knocked out by
Oh,
the
no.
gas. And on the other side, he's gone absolutely insane. He starts clawing his eyes out, screaming longer than you think. Longer
Wait a minute, now this actually feels familiar to something else.
than you think. Basically, when you're teleported here and awake in this story, time works differently for your brain, and you experience way more time than the real world does. Enough
Oh,
to
yeah.
drive you completely insane. And however much time that you think it
Longer
is,
than you think.
it's
Longer than you think.
so, using that information here and connecting the dots to the dead characters who also use that phrase, the same thing is happening with the respawn machine. Most of the people brought back to life with it experience something terrible on the other side, perhaps a near infinite amount of time inside of purgatory. And
That
the
is
scenes set in that
eternity.
bar are the afterlife, or at least some sort of purgatory. That's why we see characters that we know are dead in there, like the engineers, Archibald, and the scout. Now, normally, if you just die, being here wouldn't be an issue. The problem would be coming back. The 9 classes we see in the Team Fortress franchise are 9 of the only people who have been able to survive this respawn process intact, going into that afterlife and
right.
coming back. And even then, there's still a chance of something going wrong, just like we see in the Jaunt story, and just like we see with the Scout here in Emesis Blue. So here's my thoughts. It's laid out pretty plainly in the
Yeah,
story
that's
that
it.
the respawn machine started malfunctioning because of the sheer amount of clones Archibald was pumping out of it, supplying both the red and the blue teams. We know for a fact that the
Yeah, that's a total of 18 per fight.
Scout is a defective respawn, which affected his brain, and it
default.
also in turn affected his mental health. He's been paranoid and having strange visions and dreams, which he's described as
Well, I was in the bathroom, right? And as I was brushing my teeth, all my teeth started to fall out.
Well, the Scout isn't the only character to have similar strange visions. We know that the soldiers had a few, but more importantly for us right now, so has the medic. In fact, he's had an almost identical vision or dream of him spitting out teeth, exactly like the Scout described. So, what if the Scout isn't the only person who's come back defective? What if Ludwig did too, but his defect wasn't that his brain was damaged? What if his defect is that he had more than one set of memories? More than one personality trapped in his brain from the different people inside of him, the different teams that they were on. Ludwig is both the red and the blue medic resurrected in one body. Or at the very least, he has those two fighting personas inside of him, represented by the red and the blue teams. Stick with me here. First of all, we know that Ludwig is struggling with what seems like different personas in his brain. The Ludwig one, yes, but also the one that's a murderer. Secondly, we know for a fact that at least one red medic exists in this world, so there's more than one Ludwig out there. Thirdly, having those different personas explains the lost time that Ludwig seems to have, waking up and not understanding why he has bloody hands. And fourth, this would also explain the different states we see Ludwig in throughout the film when he seems to become more powerful. For example, after he's resurrected for the first time by the Respawn Corps, Ludwig's eyes are blue. That is the blue persona taking hold. On the other end of the spectrum though, the scenes where Ludwig loses control and murders people are always bathed in red light. That is the red persona. And this is even represented by another literary reference in the movie. See, one of the VHS tapes we see in Emesis Blue is for an old German film just called M, directed by Fritz Lang. Fritz Lang? Fritz Ludwig?
I think not.
Anyway, this film is all about a serial killer who seemingly has a separate consciousness inside of him that does all of the violence. During his trial, he explains, and forgive me for dubbing over the German here, "I can't help myself. I have no control over this evil thing inside."
This is definitely like possibly one of the earliest forms in media, excluding books, about like some of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Of me, the fire, the voices, the torment. Sounds a lot like what's inside of Ludwig in Emesis Blue, doesn't it? An evil thing coming out to kill people. The murderer in M is also identified by the letter, well, M. The same thing we see with Ludwig in Emesis Blue. It just all lines up too well. Just like the Scout, Ludwig was damaged by respawning, and he has at least two personalities inside of him. Two sets of memories battling it out, and causing him to descend further into madness and violence. Now, honestly, that is a really cool setup. A great story hidden under the surface of Emesis Blue. But what does that have to do with The Undertaker? Well, simple. That's because Ludwig is The Undertaker. But hold on, you might think that that's a bit of a leap. Like, wait, don't we see The Undertaker and Ludwig in the same scene a couple of times? And aren't they doing different things at different times? How could they possibly be the same person? Well, the answer is simple. Time travel. Again, hold on, stay with me. That's another big leap to take, I know, but it is 100% set up in this world. I didn't really have a great place to bring this up during the summary explaining the story of Emesis Blue, but there are numerous points where we straight up see characters traveling through time and interacting with past or future versions of themselves or others. Like, there are numerous phone calls that play audio from conversations earlier in the film. And remember when future Ludwig knocked over the VHS tapes and opened the doors that past Ludwig and the Scout saw? He physically interacted with the real world in the past. At another point, the soldier sees a mysterious silhouette in the distance, only to realize later that he was that silhouette. He also sees himself having a conversation with the demo man before attacking himself. If you listen closely in these scenes, you can even hear the same conversation happening in both.
I don't have time for this.
Wait, you gonna get me out of here.
Why the hell should I? I don't have time for this.
Wait, you gonna get me out of here.
Why the hell should I?
And all of this isn't even mentioning how Ludwig heals when the Respawn Corps respawns him. Like, it doesn't look like his wounds are just closing up. It looks like time is literally traveling backwards for him. The blood is going back into his body and his clothes are getting healed as well. With all of that being said, is it really that big of a leap to say that someone was able to time travel just a bit further back in time? On top of this, Ludwig becoming the Undertaker solves a lot of problems here. It's heavily implied that the Undertaker is the one that led Ludwig to the slaughterhouse to begin with. He also stole the Respawn Corps and made sure that it was exactly where it needed to be to end up in the hands of Ludwig and then the spy. All to make sure that Ludwig would respawn respawn, eventually as The Undertaker. We actually see what I believe to be the birth of The Undertaker at the very end of the movie. After Ludwig has died and the briefcase holding the respawn core is opened, remember, we see one last person respawning inside of that machine. That is The Undertaker being born before he goes on to set up all of the events that set all of this in motion, closing the loop that is Emesis Blue. And just the cherry on top here, symbolically,
God, this movie is so crazy, but also so good.
it also makes a lot of sense. I mean, the first and most obvious connection here, The Undertaker is wearing the mask and costume of a plague doctor. These were physicians who tried to treat the Black Plague in 17th century Europe, but I mean, come on, plague doctor and a medic? That's kind of on the big pointy bird mask nose, isn't it? Plus, throughout the film, Ludwig slowly grows skinnier and paler as he loses his humanity, and eventually starts dressing in black by the end, just like The Undertaker. And then there's the scene at the very end of the movie where Ludwig is in the afterlife bar bathroom. His reflection disappears, but a darker version of himself appears behind Ludwig. This is representative of that Undertaker persona taking control of Ludwig entirely. And that, my friends, is the true story of Emesis Blue. This entire horrible, tragic series of events was predestined to happen because, to The Undertaker, it already happened. The best thing that they can do is just to make sure that the people who caused all of this pain got the punishment that they deserved. Now, there is just so much here with Emesis Blue, and I feel like we've only barely scratched the surface. Honestly, there might be a world where we try to do a follow-up or two, trying to really figure out everything else going on here. Like, what the heck are the Emesis diazepam pills? And could we possibly lay out a cohesive timeline for the whole story in a way that makes sense? I mean, there's like a whole thing going on here with time travel and looping and the afterlife and all that jazz, not to mention like other movies that Fortress Films has made. Like, it's implied that Emesis Blue takes place in the same universe as a previous movie called Spies Disguise, which leans way more into comedy, and it's just a really funny juxtaposition to the serious horror here in Emesis Blue. Please let me know if any of that sounds interesting to you in the comments below. But until then, remember that it's all just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you folks next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.